Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to another animal eye tutorial for YouTube. Today I'm drawing a lovely blue cat's eye. It's something which I haven't done before and it's on brand new paper. This time I'm using the Bristol Board 500 series plate surface, which is brand new to me. So let's get started. The first thing that I did when I started this was just erase my graphite, as I always do whenever I start a new piece. I don't like to have the graphite showing through on the final piece because I find that sometimes it can come through and look shiny and it can leave a harsh line, which I really don't want to do, which is not really something you want to do with realism because you don't want any harsh lines at all. So the first colour I laid down was some dark indigo from the Polychromes, and I just outlined all of the dark parts around the eye. So I outlined the very edge of the iris, I outlined some of the darker parts within the iris itself and the pupil and the shadow above the eye. I then went over this with some Paynes grey from the Luminance. So once I got the initial basics down around the outside of the eye, I then decided to add the fur, which is something which I always do within my portraits because it helps me judge the tones and values within an iris. This cat was a lovely light grey and creamy sort of beigey colour cat. So the pencils that I used around the outside were some warm grey 1 all the way through to warm grey 6. Some dark sepia, and I also added a little bit of mauve here and there because there was a slight reflection on my reference photo. For the fur, I just layered the warm grey 1, then I went in with some warm grey 3 and then built up the layers all the way until warm grey 6. I added the warm grey 6 and the darker warm greys in the areas which were actually darker. I added the mauve a lot around the waterline of the cat's eye. The waterline of this cat's eye wasn't really white, which I normally find in a lot of portraits. It was quite dark and it sort of blended in with the fur a little bit. When drawing my fur, I always make sure that I have a really sharp pencil just to keep all those lines and keep the shading nice and smooth. When drawing this cat's eye, I found it a little bit different to the dog's eyes which I usually draw, as most of my commission work is actually dogs. What's different about this cat's eye is the fact that we have the tear duct. Normally on a dog's eye you don't really see a lot of the tear duct unless it's really pink. With this cat it was really identifiable and it was nice to be able to actually add that aspect of a drawing in. added the fur around the tear duct, and I made sure that the fur was going all in the right direction and it was looking as natural as possible. Then when it came to colouring the tear duct, I went around the outside of certain areas with a dark sepia pencil, and I outlined any highlights or watery marks which I could see within that little tear duct there. I also outlined the very edge of the tear duct, which is to the right of the page. I outlined that with some Nougat and then followed that with some Walnut brown. For the part of the skin next to the iris there, I first layered down some warm grey 1 and then I put some mauve down, and this is where I got the idea to put the mauve in the waterline as well, because I could see the mauve reflected in this part here. So I put the mauve down and then toned it down with some greys. For the tear duct itself, it was more of an orangey red colour, rather than a bright red colour which you would find on a human portrait. So I just laid down some raw umber, some burnt ochre, and then I overlaid that with some walnut brown and some burnt sienna. Then I just went around and filled out the rest of the fur and tried to blend everything together by just layering some warm greys, some cold greys, and then again that mauve as well. Now we move on to the iris part, and the first thing that I did was laid down some light cobalt blue in the highlight area of the eye. I then followed that with some genuine cobalt blue and also some grey blue, just to shade up a few of the reflections that I could see in there. I went around the very outside of the eye with some Prussian blue and some dark indigo, just so I wouldn't lose that highlight when I started to add the colour to the iris. For the iris itself, I used a combination of light blue, light cobalt blue and genuine cobalt blue, and just layered them together until I had a nice gradation of colour. So I used the light blue at the very top edges of the eye, where it's a more richer blue colour, and then the lighter blues I layered towards the bottom of the eye. Around the pupil, I tended to layer the darker blues, and that was so I could blend the pupil out nicely and have a nice gradation from the pupil out towards the edge of the iris. So I just used my Prussian blue and some dark indigo, coupled with some dark sepia as well, to really darken it up where necessary. For the area around the iris, for that really nice darker toned blue, I used the middle cobalt blue, and then I also layered some mauve on top of that to create a really nice hue. Every now and then I would darken down this area with some dark indigo and also use some cold greys and warm greys just to dull everything down a little bit. I did find as I was adding more colours to this that the eye was getting brighter and brighter, so every now and then I had to use the warm greys and cold greys in the iris colour just to dull everything down. I felt that everything was popping too much and it was just getting too bright and garish, so I just had to mute everything down with some greys. As I was adding the darker colours within the iris, I also found that my highlight area was getting too bright. It was too stark and it was just too crisp against the rest of the iris. So I just layered some more blues within there. I layered some grey blue and some genuine cobalt blue just to darken the highlight down a little bit. To keep everything nice and smooth within my eye, every other layer I would blend everything together with the Prismacolor white pencil. And this will just help to blend all of my colours together and just create a smooth surface for me to add further layers. When I'm using this technique, what I'm doing is using little circular motions and actually trying to burnish all of my colours into the paper to create that smooth surface to draw subsequent layers on. When I added all of the layers down, I was trying not to use too much of a shady, liney technique, and I was trying to use more of the little round circle technique, and this was to try and keep everything smooth and everything neat within the iris. To create the dark lines, on the iris, which you can see, I just used a little bit of the Prussian blue, and then I added some warm grey 6 followed by some dark sepia on top of that to create those little eye details that you can see there. So this is my finished eye and I'm really pleased with the outcome. One thing that I wish I would have done was found a reference photo that had a lot more detail in there. So I wanted to create more of those little dark sections. I wanted to add more highlights and everything within there. But I'm pretty happy with how this piece turned out, and as I said at the beginning, this was brand new paper to me and I was really pleased with the way that I found that it worked with my techniques. I have listed all of the colours I have used down below, as well as the surface and anything that I've used for this little tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed this short tutorial on how to draw this cat's eye. I'm looking forward to recording the next 2 parts of this little animal eye series for you. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on all of my social media sites. The links are in the description down below, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye!